Have you ever noticed how some people say they're fine, but the smile lasts only half a second? Or how someone talks about happiness while their eyes look empty? Since we were kids, we're taught to trust words. But words lie. The body never lies. The tone of voice never lies. Silence never lies. Alan Watts knew this. He understood that the truth is in what people avoid saying. It's in the pause before the answer, in the look that shifts away, in the laugh that stretches too long trying to fill a void. By the end of this video, I'm going to give you 3 foolproof signs that reveal what someone is really feeling. But first, you need to understand something fundamental about the masks we all wear. We live in a world of masks. The overly happy person might be running from their own sadness. The overly confident one might be hiding a huge fear of appearing weak. What's interesting is that people often don't just hide from others. They hide from themselves. They build such a convincing image that they end up believing it. But the mask always slips. A look that shifts away when a certain subject comes up. A laugh that lasts too long, revealing discomfort. The abrupt change of conversation when something touches an old wound. Why do we do this? Simple. Life is scary. From early on, we learn that showing vulnerability is dangerous. Society demands constant performance. You can't be sad, can't be afraid. You need to be strong, always in control. So we create characters. And the more fragile we feel inside, the stronger the mask we build on the outside. But here's the question nobody asks. If everyone wears a mask, who's really connecting with whom? Pay attention to silence. It's never empty. When you ask a simple question and the person takes time to respond, that means something. When they respond too quickly with a rehearsed phrase, that also means something. Silence reveals what words try to hide. Think about the times you said you were fine when you weren't. How many times did you use that phrase as a shield to keep people away from your pain? We all do this. And when we recognize it in ourselves, we start recognizing it in others. People who avoid certain subjects are telling you exactly where the wound is. Those who abruptly change the conversation are showing you where it hurts. Those who talk too much about a specific subject are revealing their deepest insecurities. Alan Watts said something powerful. What we avoid reveals much more about us than what we seek. The person who constantly proclaims their virtue probably hides vanity. The one who constantly talks about honesty might be fighting against their own dishonesty. The pause before the answer, the shifting gaze. All of this are silent confessions. Truths being whispered in a language few have learned to hear. But there's something even deeper happening here. You know that person who insists too much on something, who needs to constantly repeat a characteristic about themselves. They're trying to convince themselves. The person who keeps saying they never care about others, opinions, cares too much. The one who constantly claims to be happy is probably fighting sadness. It's as if the volume of the statement is proportional to the size of the internal doubt. Imagine a king on a huge throne, surrounded by guards, shouting orders. Now imagine that same king alone in his room at night, without crown, without guards, without throne. What do you see? A scared child. This changes everything when you understand it. The controller isn't demonstrating strength. They're demonstrating terror. Terror of chaos. Terror of discovering they're not as powerful as they pretend to be. The arrogant person isn't superior. They're terrified. Behind all arrogance exists an immense fear of being considered inferior. Alan Watts saw how people build fortresses around themselves. Walls made of control, certainty, superiority. But these fortresses aren't a sign of strength. They're a sign of extreme vulnerability. And when you recognize this, you have a crucial choice to make. When you start seeing through the masks, you can judge and manipulate, or you can understand. Which one you choose says everything about who you are. True wisdom isn't in pointing out others' weaknesses. It's in recognizing shared humanity. When you see arrogance, you can simply recognize the fear behind it. When you see someone performing, you can recognize the emptiness that person is trying to fill. Here's something that will change your perspective. Most human actions aren't driven by desire, but by fear. People don't seek things because they want them. They seek because they're afraid not to have. They don't work so hard because they love the work. They work hard because they're afraid of being considered insufficient. How much of what you do comes from fear? Fear of being rejected, of being abandoned. of not being loved, of being forgotten, of not being enough. When you recognize this fear in yourself, when you stop running from it and simply observe it, something changes. You stop needing the masks. And when you stop needing yours, you stop being threatened by others. Masks. You can see through them without being offended. You can recognize fear without needing to attack. But where does all this come from? Every adult carries within them a wounded child. The patterns we see in adults almost always started in childhood. Someone who was never heard as a child won't be able to truly listen to others. They'll interrupt, they'll want to talk more, they'll need to be the center, because inside there's still that child begging to be heard. Someone who was abandoned will have enormous difficulty with intimacy. They'll push people away before they can leave. They'll sabotage relationships, because inside there's a child terrified of being left again. Someone who had to earn love through achievements will become an eternal performer. They'll work too much. They'll seek constant approval. They'll never feel enough, because there's still that child believing love needs to be deserved. Think of someone who deeply irritates you. Now imagine that person at 5 years old, crying alone in a corner. What happened to that child for them to become the adult that irritates you today? When you understand this, when you see an aggressive adult and recognize the scared child inside them, everything changes. You no longer see an enemy. You see a wounded human being trying to survive the only way they know how. And here's the most beautiful paradox of all. The more you see, the less you hate. When you recognize fear in the arrogant person, it's hard to hate them. When you see the wound behind the aggression, anger transforms into understanding. When you understand that the cold person is just protecting a heart that's been broken too many times, you stop demanding warmth from them. This is liberating. You stop taking things personally. When someone attacks you, you no longer see a personal attack. You see a person in pain reacting the only way they know how. But there's another side to this. Reading others is also reading yourself. When you start recognizing fear in others, you inevitably start recognizing it in yourself. You see how you also wear masks, how you also perform, how you're also trying to hide your own wounds. It's impossible to see truth in others without starting to see it in yourself. And that's the real gift. When you see yourself clearly, when you recognize your own masks, you gain the possibility of choice. You can keep wearing the masks, or you can start removing some of them. Be more truthful, more vulnerable, more human. There are certain patterns that, once recognized, appear everywhere. The laugh that lasts a bit too long reveals discomfort. The person is trying to hide something. Constant interruptions, fear of being forgotten, fear that if they stay silent, they'll disappear. The need to always be the center turns every conversation into a story about themselves. This person is confessing an immense internal emptiness. Aggressive criticism is usually not about the person being criticized. It's about envy, about seeing in the other something the person wishes they had, about projecting their own dissatisfaction. Alan Watts said that our strongest beliefs almost always arise from deep wounds. The person who believes everyone is selfish was probably betrayed. The one who believes nobody is trustworthy had their trust broken. The one who believes love is weakness was probably hurt when they allowed themselves to love. So when someone tells you what they believe about the world, don't just ask if it's true. Ask what happened for that person to believe it. What pain generated this view? What wound created this armor? And when you see this clearly, something magical happens. Each person is a mirror. Each behavior is a confession. The illusions start to fall. You stop believing the performances. Stop being impressed by well-built masks. Stop being intimidated by arrogance. Stop being offended by aggression, because you see through it. You see the scared child behind the controlling adult. You see the broken heart behind the cold person. You see the insecurity behind the arrogance. And when you see this, you free yourself. You free yourself from the need to convince, to impress, to win arguments, because you understand that none of this really matters. What matters is true connection, and true connection only happens when the masks fall. We spend our lives seeking connection while doing everything to hide. We want to be seen, but we're afraid of being truly seen. We want to be loved, but we only show edited versions. Then we're alone in the middle of the crowd, surrounded by people but completely isolated because nobody knows who we really are. Nobody sees beyond the mask. True power isn't in manipulating people after reading their fears. It's in responding with compassion. It's in recognizing that we're all just scared children trying to pretend we know what we're doing, all wounded, all afraid. And now, as I promised, the 3 foolproof signs. First, observe the body when the mouth speaks. If arms cross, if feet point toward the exit, if the body pulls back while words say agreement, you're seeing the truth. The body always says what the mouth hides. Second, pay attention to tone, not words. A voice that rises at the end of a sentence reveals insecurity, even when the person is affirming something. A tone that suddenly hardens shows where the defense is. A pace that's too fast indicates nervousness. Monotony reveals emotional disconnection. Third, what comes after silence. When you ask a question and there's a pause, observe what comes next. If the person changes the subject, you touched a wound. If the answer is too generic, they're avoiding. If it comes with a laugh for no reason, it's pure discomfort. These 3 signs never fail. Body, tone, silence. They're the 3 languages of truth that nobody can completely control. But remember, you're reading this to understand, not to manipulate. Reading people is an act of courage, because when you truly look at others, you need to look at yourself. Each mask you recognize in others is a mask you also wear. Each fear you identify is a fear you also carry. Each wound you see is a mirror of your own pain. Alan Watts taught us that the separation between me and you is an illusion. We're all part of the same consciousness experiencing itself through billions of different forms. When you hurt someone, you're hurting yourself. When you love someone, you're loving yourself. The world changes when you stop reacting to masks and start responding to what's behind them. When you see pain instead of aggression. When you recognize fear instead of arrogance. When you respond with love instead of defense. In the end, reading others isn't about power. It's about freedom. Freedom from illusion. Freedom from judgment. Freedom from fear. Because when you see that we're all in the same boat, all trying to survive, all carrying wounds and fears, competition loses its meaning. What remains is shared humanity. Compassion. Connection. Maybe that's what Alan Watts was trying to tell us all along. That true wisdom isn't in separating yourself from others. It's in recognizing we were never separated. That each person you meet is yourself wearing another mask. And that the greatest act of love you can offer is to see through those masks and recognize the light that exists in everyone, even when that light is hidden behind many layers of pain and fear. If this video touched you in any way, if it made you see something new, leave your like. Subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-knowledge and awakening. Until next time.